Hello, good morning and good evening. We're coming to you from the sweltering suburbs of Washington, D.C. today, where it's summer-like and the temperatures are going to be about 90 degrees. I'm Carl Alto, Managing Director of the Joint Baltic American National Committee, and welcome to JBANC's 60th Anniversary Forum on the U.S. Baltic Relationship Parliamentary Perspectives. I will introduce our special guests who are with us today in just a moment, but first I wanted to say why we're all here today. Yesterday was JBANC's 60th birthday. Yes, we were established on April 27th, 1961 at a Baltic conference in Washington, D.C. to bring together Estonian, Latvian, and Lithuanian Americans and the national organizations which have represented us: the Estonian American National Council, the American Latvian Association, and the Lithuanian American Council. And I'm happy to say that the presidents of our three organizations, Mariju Renka-Abel, Pēters Blumbergs, and Saulius Caprice, are respectively here with us today. So welcome. So yesterday I had a little piece of chocolate cake and a glass of wine to celebrate the anniversary. But we are expecting another rich 60 years of advocacy and support for the Baltic cause in the United States. As we operate on a shoestring, this event would not have been possible without the support of our three parent organizations, our individual donors, and who have been very generous, and for this event directly, the Baltic American Freedom Foundation. During this round anniversary year, and because of COVID, because of the COVID pandemic, we are now forced to spend much time online. And first, I'm glad that you are all here with us today online to join us. We are planning a series of at least 3 online events over the next month or so during this anniversary year. So please stay tuned for more discussions on important issues and hot topics, which will go along with the weather today. Thank you again, BAF and others, for making this event possible. And I also wanted to thank the Estonian American National Council for the use of their Zoom account for this event today, and to EANC's DC Director Karin Shuey for running the board, as we used to say in the radio business, and also a shout out to my colleague Emilia Mendelssohn, who is spending her last week with us on a Vixen Scholarship at the Fund for American Studies. She is heading back to Riga soon, and then the world. We'll have about 40 minutes for discussion today, and hopefully about 10 or 15 minutes for Q&A. Both Karin and Emilia will be fielding questions at the end of the program. And if audience members want to ask something, you can do that in the chat. We don't have a Q&A function for this event, but ask your questions in the chat or raise your hand, and you can do that virtually, or you can raise your hand. And in the meantime, please mute your mics. And as we are recording, please comb your hair. We have an exciting hour lined up today for this Zoom discussion with 3 very distinguished members of the Baltic parliaments, all leading members in their respective countries' foreign affairs committees. So they are perfectly positioned to remark on foreign policy, and more importantly, for the sake of this discussion, on relations with the United States. So our 3 speakers are Ojārs Kalniņš, who is the deputy director, or deputy chairman rather, of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Latvian Saeima, or the Parliament. And for all 3 of the speakers, if I just said everything about them that needed to be said, would just cover the whole hour. So I'm going to keep this very brief. Ojārs, I think, very importantly, is the head of Latvia's delegation to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and we definitely want to hear more about the new Crimea platform, which was just established. Ojārs was way back when, in the last century, with the American Latvian Association here in Rockville, and became Latvia's ambassador to the United States before he went to Latvia and on to bigger and better things. Also with us is Eerik-Niiles Kross, who is a member of the Estonian Parliament and the Foreign Affairs Committee. He's also a member of the delegation of the Parliamentary Assembly to the Council of Europe. He's advised the governments of Georgia and Ukraine. He took part in the Iraqi Freedom Mission in 2003 to 2004 and has dedicated himself to issues of security and foreign policy. And he was also here, as he just recently just reminded us, at the Estonian embassy in Washington, D.C. in the early 1990s and was the chargé d'affaires while he was here for a short time. And then finally, Emanuelis Zingeris, last but not least. Emanuelis is a great friend of JBANC from over the years. He's a signatory to the Act of Independence of Lithuania in 1990 and the head of the Lithuanian delegation to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that he was the rapporteur on issues related to Ukraine. And also, Emanuelis is a recipient of, a prior recipient of the Truman Reagan Medal of Freedom presented by the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. And you will also note that one of our advertised speakers, Žygimantas Pavilionis, chairman of Lithuania's Foreign Affairs Committee, is not here with us today. We found out yesterday that together with his Estonian and Latvian counterparts, that they're on their way to Ukraine at this very moment on a mission of solidarity. So fortunately, our great friend Emanuelis was able to step in at the 11th hour, literally, and we're grateful to both of them. But Žygis was kind enough to provide us with a short greeting, a short video greeting, a video which he made for us yesterday in Vilnius. And at this moment, we'll just take a pause and we will cue up that video and show his greeting. So, Karin.
Hi, Karl. Hi, friends of JBANC, Friends of Freedom. Unfortunately, I will not be able to join your ceremony because with friends, Baltic chairs of Foreign Affairs Committee, I'm traveling tomorrow to Ukraine, to the front line of our freedom. But standing today in front of the old barricades of January 13, where I was standing 30 years ago here, defending our freedom. We were first to revolt, and we did it successfully, destroying the evil empire, having you behind our backs all the time. You've been fighting for us on the Hill in Washington, D.C., that was never recognizing our occupation. But today our fight continues. We fight for Ukrainian freedom, for Ukrainian and Georgian membership in NATO. We continue to fight for EU membership of Moldova, Ukraine and Georgia. We are the embassy of Belarus freedom in Lithuania. We host a lot of Russian dissidents fighting for their own freedom. And today in Lithuanian Parliament we're joining the common fight for freedom on a global scale against different human rights violations China is doing, as well as bullying its neighbors. So let's join our forces as well as with Cuban dissidents fighting for freedom in Cuba, in Latin hemisphere. This is our fight. Democracies are still under attack. We are losing this fight in different regions, and it's time to convene the best. I hope I meet you soon in Washington, D.C., in Democracy Summit or earlier, and we will do it. We have to continue. Thank you and happy birthday, JBANC. Best regards from Vilnius.
Very symbolic message there from Žygis at the Barricades Memorial by the Lithuanian Parliament yesterday in Vilnius. I am now going to move on so that our speakers can start the discussion. The discussion today will focus on the U.S. Baltic relationship and the view from the Baltics regarding cooperation with the U.S. Congress, among others. Everyone will have a chance for a short statement if they wish, or I'm going to dive right into the first question right now. And my first question is to Ojārs, Eerik, and Emanuelis, if you're there with us. What is it that you want from the United States, and what is it that the U.S. wants from the Baltics? It's a big question. So, Ojārs, perhaps you.
Well, thank you, and greetings from Riga, where it's spring-like 9 degrees centigrade, which for you in the States is probably around 50. But we like it. This is spring for us. We even see the sun every once in a while. So we're all very, very happy. And it looks like we may be turning the corner on the whole COVID issue. So it's very good to be here. And also, Carl, I have to mention, as far as my connection with JBANC, when I was the ALA representative, I was also a JBANC representative, and I served as chairman for 1 year. So I'm a veteran of JBANC as well, and I really appreciate what you've been doing and what everybody who's involved with JBANC has been doing all these years. What do we want from the United States? To keep up the same relationship we've had for the last 30 years. The Baltics have had an outstanding relationship ever since the restoration of independence in '91. Regardless of who's in Congress, regardless of who's been in the White House, it's been consistent. And especially if you know how much we've worked with the State Department and the Pentagon, that's been consistent for 30 years as well. There have been small changes, but not in our relationships. And in a way, I think, a lot of people ask why the Baltic states have always gotten the support from the U.S., why we're important. We're small countries. But I think I could see 2 reasons. One is that we're a success story, especially for the United States. They supported us for 50 years, a non-recognition policy, and it proved to be the right thing. And we won that battle, and the U.S. was there. And I think we continue to be a success story over these last 30 years as members of NATO, as members of the EU. We're 3 good European countries to work with. And that's proven out, I think, over these 30 years. Yes, we've had some differences and so on. But and I'm not going to go too much longer in the intro, but I think right now, for me, the #1 priority for us in the Baltics, as far as the U.S. is concerned, is to bring the United States and the European Union back together, to rebuild a relationship that was an outstanding friendship, an alliance, a close working relationship, transatlantic relationship that existed. It suffered over the last 4 years, and it looks like it's going back to normal and the main reason for that is that the big problems that we face, especially here in the Baltics, are bigger than we can solve. And the European Union alone can't solve them, but the US and the European Union together can. And whether it's what's happening in Ukraine and Crimea, whether it's cyber terrorism, whether it's other conflicts that we face, even global climate problems, the only way that these problems are going to be solved is the US and Europe work closely together. And I think that's our role in the Baltic states, is to help foster this relationship. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Ojārs. Eerik, please chime in, and maybe also just in addition, what is it that, just generally speaking, what is it that the American public should know about the Baltic countries in the framework of security, why it's important, if you want to delve a little bit more deeply into that?
Well, the Baltic states, if we were 3 islands somewhere near Iceland, we would be interesting, but not important. But it's location, like they say in the real estate industry, it's all location. And we, as we've always been historically, we're right in the middle. We are a part of Europe. Right now, the biggest security threat and crisis in Europe is the war in Ukraine. And the country that is promoting this war in Ukraine happens to be a few hundred kilometers from us, just across the border. This is obviously a major concern for us. And this is the case where we need total support. We need, and this is where NATO has really come through for us I'd say in the years since this whole Ukrainian crisis began.
Eric, please.
Carl, just technically, I'm Ojārs.
No, but I was referring to Eric also.
Okay, you got the other
I know
one.
you're Eric, and your middle name is Eric's, right?
Just for people who don't know, when you run for parliament, whether you use your middle name or not, you're forced to include it. And legally, I have to use it for the rest of my life. I never did in my early life. So,
Hey, listen, the Baltic thing is you have to cover all the bases, right?
Yeah, with me, it was always when my mother used my middle name, I knew I had done something wrong. So
Same here.
But anyway,
Okay.
I assume we were
Eric from
talking.
Estonia.
Yes, it's thank you very much for getting us all together online. But at least it's better than nothing. We have all suffered over the last year and more under extreme deficit of human interaction, and particularly international interaction. So at least that is good. I was just thinking while listening to you all that JBANC has been in action for 30 years under the Russian occupation time or Soviet occupation time of the Baltic states, and for another 30 years while we have been free. And I must say that the last 30 years have gone a lot faster than the first 30.
Yeah, we can split that right in half. So time flies by.
That's right. And there is, at least not in the foreseeable future, I can't see a scenario where JBANC wouldn't be needed anymore. I think looking at the security environment in Europe right now and globally, and the small Baltic states next to Russia, yes, in NATO, yes, in the European Union, but nonetheless in a rather fragile environment. At least we in Tallinn feel that JBANC is really needed and maybe not utilized as much as it could be. So let's work on that as well. So what do we need from the United States? I very much agree with Ojārs that foremost we need more of the same. We have enjoyed a very good, fruitful, I would say, relationship with the United States. The Baltic states have been, whoever in government in Tallinn, Riga, or Vilnius, I think always the staunchest allies of the United States in EU at least, maybe even in Europe wider, and we have all intention to continue that. What worries us more is the standing of the United States in Europe, in the public opinion of Europe, rather than post the last presidency. This relationship between the cross-Atlantic relationship has been quite complicated. We all know the statements of the president of France, the Germans recently, and work needs to be done there. So what we are hoping for is a stronger cross-Atlantic relationship, the U.S. influence and standing in the North Atlantic Alliance foremost, and continued support to the emerging democracies. for the Baltic security, the success, yes, we are a success story, but losing it is always, as Reagan said, a generation away or even less. So we need to keep up, but it's our existential interest that countries like Ukraine, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova eventually succeed and do not drift away towards the Russian, Chinese, Eurasian sphere of influence. Europe, of course, has a bigger role there. We are closer. We are trying to convince our European partners that this is important. But what some call strategic retreat of the US in the affairs East European over the last years has had its impact. We have right now a serious crisis. I mean, we have a war in Ukraine, but we have serious political crisis in, I think, all of the countries I just named: Belarus, Georgia, Armenia, Moldova. They all have either a constitutional crisis, government crisis, etc. And their European NATO perspectives are not very clear, and that worries us because that is a pre-programmed long-term problem right now for them, but eventually for all of us. And there we need to feel and know that the United States first understands the importance of that issue and will continue to support to make sure that those countries gravitate towards us and towards our space of our values and not the other way.
Thanks, Eric. Excellent point about the opportunity that these countries, Eastern Partnership countries, deserve a chance, and if we're not there to help them, then who knows what the future will be like. But we can't also let their dreams just wash away. I wanted to shift just a little bit because maybe more from the American perspective and the Hill perspective. So what is your relationship? I'm talking about the country or the parliament or your personal relationship with the U.S. Congress. I had noticed an increase in the number of delegations going back and forth from the Baltics to the U.S., from the U.S. to the Baltics, especially since the start of the war in Ukraine 7 years ago. And of course, these have come to an abrupt halt. Ojārs had mentioned that he had not traveled in a plane for over a year, much longer for me. But what are some of the highlights, of the relationship with the U.S. Congress or plans for the future? Former Speaker John Boehner's memoirs are out. I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at them, but in it, I understand that he mentions the Baltics in a good way. And what would you like to see in a future memoir by Speaker Pelosi, or if there were ever a Speaker, Kevin McCarthy? What would you like to see them mention in their memoirs in the future? So back to Ojārs.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Pelosi, because Nancy Pelosi was the last person I saw on my last trip to Washington, D.C. last year in March. And I was there with our speaker, Emanuelis, and a delegation, and we stood in that office that we saw a great deal about in the press after January 6th. So for me, that was quite a remarkable moment because I was there. On a parliamentary level, yes, we have bilateral visits. Foreign Affairs committees visit the U.S. We go there more than U.S. congressmen come to Europe. It's a little bit harder for them to travel. One big advantage that I have is that the NATO Parliamentary Assembly is one of the rare interparliamentary assemblies where U.S. congressmen participate. And they come to Europe regularly, and they're very involved. At the moment, all NATO members have parliamentarians in NATO PA. And we just elected a new president for 2 years, and that's Congressman Gerald Connolly from Virginia. The U.S. delegation, Rick Larson and others, are very active. They always have been. And for us, that's been a great opportunity to exchange ideas, to talk about not just NATO issues, but U.S. Baltic relations. I remember a very important meeting we had, and this was 2016, right after the election, right after Donald Trump was elected. And you may remember that, is that when the 3 Baltic Foreign Affairs committees were invited to Washington to meet with senators. And for me, in my 15 years in Washington, I have never met with that many senators in one day. I think in 2 days, we visited 17. It just showed the interest that was there. So all I can say is that when we can meet, and the biggest problem is geography. It's just the distance. They come over here rarer, but that's where NATO PA helps, because they have a reason for coming over. And maybe again, after the COVID crisis, these visits will continue. Plus, the U.S. has a special interest, the congressman has special interest in coming here to look at the NATO bases. Ojārs is the largest military base in the Baltic region. It's high tech. It's a sight to see, and every congressional delegation that comes to this region wants to go there and see that. There are U.S. troops in all 3 Baltic states. And here I just want to mention, when we talk about the importance of transatlantic, we can't forget Canada. Canada is extremely important to us, especially here in Latvia. They lead the battalion. And so whenever we talk about NATO and transatlantic ties, it's not just the US over there, it's Canada as well. And the Canadians have really done a lot, and they're welcomed warmly in this community here. So.
Here we go. Thanks, Ojārs. I see that we've been joined by our friend Emanuelis Zingeris. Emanuelis, welcome. Hi, how are you? Where are you? And listen, the floor is yours. We've gone through the introductions. We're at the halfway point. So please let us know how's it going. Your microphone.
Yes, I am so glad to see you personally. You cannot even imagine how I'm glad to see the old family. Your voluntary involvement for decades, not years, but decades. And all family of the Baltic countries. Ojārs just covered a huge field of our interest, but personally you, JBANC, covered the fields of our contacts, even not next to our embassies, but directly linking us to the Capitol Hill. So can you imagine how we are thankful, the same musketeers from the 90s. And I feel, actually, personally, I feel like a criminal now. Well, we don't give enough attention to JBANC, to your guys, your personal support, especially in the earlier time, not now when we are firm members of NATO, and still we are on the border of an extremely uncertain world. We are not saying that we are secure, that we are under a firm umbrella. We still need to make this umbrella more firm, strengthened. But your personal support, I would like to express official attitude of my American caucus in my parliament. I'm chairing probably more like 20 years. I'm 8-time elected, and those colors means for us safety, security, insurance, and democracy. And waving democracy in Europe, you have all forms of attacks against yours and ours Jeffersonian values, values of French Revolution 1789, human rights, and you are not looking of all your possible internal, give a diplomatic expression for the processes in the United States. Your internal disputes, or your internal disputes, or your internal discussions about the values inside of United States, still you are an example of how to overcome the problems, how to become a multicultural community and be still on the front. So finally, we have expression in the mouth of President of the United States, not only America first, but solidarity first, democracy first. And that's mean safety for us against dictatorial regimes, Russia and China. And in our case, our direct neighbor is Belarus, don't forget. They are active killers of democracy. And JBANC is active supporter of democracy. We have, for example, we would like to have our common memory together and to remind for example, the outcomes of Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact now on the 15th of June, and probably it will be 16 or 17 of June in Riga and Tallinn. We have the anniversary from 1941 when Russians started huge deportations from Baltic countries. Probably we can cooperate with you commemorating this terrible terror 1 week before Nazi invasion, 1 week before Barbarossa, and huge numbers of our best people from Riga, Tallinn, Kaunas, and Vilnius this time in 41, sent to Siberia and killed underway. So it will be good to communicate together and to make us at least a statement on the 15th or 16th of June about this terrible anniversary of Soviet invasion. We are not here overbooked only with Russia. We are not only paranoid about possible Moscow invasion in the future, but we are serious about that. Serious looking to Ukraine. Don't forget, we would like to include to every delegation from the Baltic countries, Ukrainian friends from their parliaments, and some guys from Belarusian democratic opposition, trying to extend our hand to possible democracies in the future. Until now is dark night in Minsk, dark night in Moscow. So I really, with Professor Landsbergis, extending to you best regards from Professor Landsbergis, our leader. I was behind him in '88, actually pushing him and organizing the first elections and pushing him to become a leader of our Zionist movement. And he's just make a call and ask me to congratulate all of you together. So I would like to express my deep regards from all our former leadership of our democratic movement in '88 and '90s. I was in contact with in the years '88, '89 with Asta Banionis, with Viktoras Nakas, with the people in State Department, Mr. Zerolis. He is probably now 88-year-old, and Paul Gobel, all those guys who become our family, especially you guys from JBANC. I remember, Ojārs remembered 2016 visit. I remember our common visit of the Baltic speakers together with Ojārs and me including in March, a few days before pandemic, to the Capitol Hill. Pelosi spent with us probably twice more. Time was expended twice more like it was scheduled. Every committee chairman asked us for advice how to deal with Eastern dictatorships and how to promote our common values. For this reason, immediately after pandemic issue will be more or less closed, down finally, and we will be more or less safe. We would like to organize again our common visits from foreign affairs committees, from our parliaments, including the speakers. It's extremely useful to have even Polish leaders together. Well, Poles are the same mentality, and they are based on the same absolutely worries like us. And of course include our Ukrainian friends. So in this case, JBANC, like open society, who include all goodwill people fighting against those guys who just trying to restore Soviet legacy in the region and try to destroy even you American elections. They're trying to destroy even United States integrity. We now are probably the best consultants in Capitol Hill to tell them how to fight for our common community of democratic states. So community for democratic states is again on the table. Mr. Biden just declared that on the end of the year will be a huge summit of democratic states facing two biggest problems in the world, Kremlin and Beijing dictatorships and their attempts to destroy democratic world. And we will be with you together. But the first, if you allow me, you know, my mother, she was victim of the Holocaust. Part of my family is in Israel. But now I would like to mention that part of my family were deported to Siberia too in 1941. And now when we will have this possibility to make a commemoration probably distance commemoration, I would like to express my opinion that we should do together Riga, Tallinn, Vilnius, and JBANC, and to present our memories, what means for us Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, but not old-fashioned, but new-fashioned, telling about how we are thankful to United States for not recognition policy. Not only that, but the date is coming. The date is coming when our diplomatic relations between U.S. and Baltic states were restored in September. But that's not extremely good date. Well, before 50 years, our embassies were working from Washington, and we should remind not only the date among hundreds of countries who recognized and restored diplomatic ties, but the old ties, the first visits to Vilnius, Riga, Tallinn by the people from Congress, like Richard Durbin, like like Senator Ojārs, before September of 91, before Soviet Union was dismantled, but during the Soviet occupation and our between the declaration of freedom from Baltic countries and until Soviet Union was dismantled, that's 17 months of our very uncertain but very firm fight for independence. The groups of people from Congress visited like Richard Durbin, Mr. Ojārs, and others visited Riga, Tallinn, and Vilnius, and we should commemorate together with those guys who were on our side during those absolutely uncertain time. So in this case, I would like to say thank you for JBANC permanent bridges built by you to Congress, by you to White House, and to American rooted Baltic and Jewish and Ukrainian and Polish groups, and Canadian society were always together. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Emanuelis. That was very heartfelt thoughts about a lot of things that we can ponder about the history. 30 years ago, a lot has happened, as we said at the beginning, that the time just seems to be going too fast. And you kind of prompted me a little bit, because my next question was going to be about June the 14th, which is the 80th anniversary of the 1941 Baltic deportations. But as we heard just the other day, the next NATO summit was just announced.
The same.
Which will be happening. Sorry?
The same time.
And
14,
at the
15.
same time, right. So I'd like to turn back to Estonian, Eerik, and maybe to ask you, what are your countries, what are Estonia's priorities for this summit? And then, you know, considering what Emanuelis mentioned about, you know, doing more and thinking about countries that are suffering now. And, you know, the Baltics were under occupation for over 50 years. But Eerik, what is your and what are your thoughts perhaps on expanding a permanent NATO force in the Baltics? So I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you. Well, as everyone knows, you do not really succeed with changing people's minds at a summit. By the time the countries, NATO members gather at the summit, whatever is possible to agree has already been agreed. So our work obviously continues constantly. And the pandemic, we have mentioned that many times, but it has brought a lot of slowdown and complications. Talking about the relationship to Washington, you know, there are people, nobody has seen anyone for more than a year. There's a new administration. There are a lot of new people at the Congress on the Hill, and you know, those ties urgently need to be retied. But obviously, NATO works mostly at the ambassadorial level, and the talks are going on. It might be that at this point, our main interest with NATO actually lies outside the Baltics, and that is the map for Ukraine. I mean, we need some sign for the Ukrainians and for the Russians that Ukraine is, that aggressive behavior by Russia is not slowing down. It can't slow down NATO expansion. Because if they already succeeded with that sort of in 2008, because that is a sad fact that the war against Georgia pretty much stopped NATO expansion, and even significantly slowed down Ukrainian and Georgian NATO aspiration. And this game is being repeated. If the Russians learn this lesson again, that a little bit of aggressive bullying, and NATO backs down and doesn't want to have countries with conflicts, that's a very, very vicious circle, and it's a terrible trap, because that pretty much means that Russia can dictate which country can join and which country can't. We do not think that NATO can afford that in the long run. It's comfortable in the short run. So there is the debate going on among NATO members what to do about. Ukraine has asked for a map, a membership action plan. European allies, traditionally the West European allies, are hesitant and cautious. The United States seems to be more on board with that, but obviously NATO needs a unified voice. So it remains to be seen what can be achieved before June. Regarding the Baltic American military relationship, and that is going well, but obviously, you know, without going into details, we always would like to have more. We are quite happy with the rotating visits with the Navy coming in and going out of the Baltic Sea. Right now, they might like to look more towards the Black Sea, but we are fine with them in the Baltic Sea as well. And very shortly, we are still a little bit worried about the mindset if we talk about defense planning and what is the scenario for in case of an aggression against the Baltic states. And until now, the thinking is that if the Russians come, to put it bluntly, they will come, they will take the territory, and then we will take it back. What we are trying to tell everyone is that it would be a lot cheaper, a lot faster to not let them come. But that would mean more forces based in the Baltic states. The presence needs to be beefed up, but that's not going to happen at the NATO summit. But we are obviously working on that, and eventually we will get there. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know we have about only 10 minutes or so left. I did want to get to some questions. I understand that we have one that's come in via email, and Ojārs and Emanuelis, if you want to help answer any of these or answer any of the other questions that have come up. So I'll turn right now to Karin Shui to bring up the question that was asked.
Right. Hi. Thanks, Carl. So I got a question from Charlie Madhouse in the audience. And first I have to kind of disagree with the question because he starts out, what can we unimportant Americans with Baltic connections? And I want to, dismiss that thought right now because Baltic Americans are the most important resource we have to engage with Congress and really make a difference here. So what he asks, what can we do on a grassroots level to promote the goals of JBANC?
Okay, who's willing to take that one?
I'm just going to make one comment just to respond to Charlie Madhouse about being unimportant. I was a Baltic lobbyist in Washington for 5 years, from 1985 until 90, before I joined the embassy. And one of the things I realized that we had accomplished in the U.S. is that we made Americans think there were many more Balts in the world than there really were. And, it's all marketing and it's presentation. And I think if a lot of congressmen actually knew how many of us there were and whatever, they may have had second thoughts, but we really did a good job of promoting ourselves. And I think even today, here in Europe, we're important to the Americans because we're one of their doorways into not only Europe, but also Russia and beyond. But my experience in the US, and I grew up there, is that active voters can have a lot of influence, starting with their congressmen. And congressmen are important to us. And you get 1 or 2 really great congressmen, over there in Wisconsin or Michigan, and they could be invaluable. Guys like Rick Larson now and others. So Shimkus. So I think, if you want to, you've got JBANC to help you lead the way, and I think you're all important.
Yeah, if I may join in on the same note that there is nothing. It's very far from the truth that the American Balts are unimportant. I very much agree with Ojārs. Just a very quick historical anecdote. In 1941, when the World War II was going on, America hadn't joined the war yet, and the Germans had already invaded Russia, and Britain was in trouble. So Eden, the British Foreign Secretary at the time, came to Washington to discuss with Roosevelt how to get the Russian support, how to maybe get the American support. Basically, strategic meeting, and one of the questions was what to give the Russians so that they would be our friends. And the Brits, one of their ideas was, the Baltic states, they already took them anyway, and Finland, countries like that. And apparently, unfortunately, Roosevelt at that point said, well, Finland, no. Finland is very popular among my voters. It has a great name in the United States. I have elections here. No, Finland is out of the question. The Baltic states, well, we can talk about it. Nobody knows about them. And that was 1941. Fortunately, history didn't go that bad, but it was very close. And the Brits were ready to give us away. So the JBANC's job and the American Baltic job is to make sure that we are where Finland was in 1941 in the eyes of Roosevelt's of this world.
Very good point. I think I had heard somewhere anecdotally too. I don't know if this is really true or not, but somebody had asked Zbig Brzezinski, the former national security advisor under Jimmy Carter, but this was much later. Somebody had asked him, well, guess how many Estonians there are in the U.S., Estonian Americans? And he had thought about it and said, well, there must be about 500,000. And there are hardly 500,000 Estonians worldwide. So that was a great guess or a great answer. I don't know if he was just playing to his audience or his the person who asked the question, but I've always felt that we project a lot more than the numbers, and it's always more about the quality than the quantity. Emanuelis, are you still there? Do you want to add anything to this? Or if there are any other questions in the meantime, yes. I know that, Emanuelis?
Yeah, it's me.
Yeah, hi, go ahead.
Carl, first of all, thank you so much for your personal contribution during those years and years and years. You were a key person for us, trust me. I remember you, I don't know, probably 2.5 decades being next to us every day during our step-by-step travel under safe umbrellas of NATO and European Union. Thank you, Carl. Thank you so much for being with us together and helping us to be more a part of American internal political life. So, look, my answer will be a little bit probably bigger, not only about how many Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians we have in Chicago and other cities or in Washington, D.C., but about ideas. So we become now, guys, like Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin West. So Checkpoint Charlie Berlin West never counted how many West Berliners are in Chicago. We are last defending point of the Western civilization here in the front of Russia and Belarus. In between, Königsberg region and Minsk and Moscow. So we become an issue of principle, key principle, key commitments of United States policy, defending democratic community. We are here looking to the front. Yesterday, for example, Belarusians, our border officers took from our border 5-6 Belarusians who crossed in panic, political refugees crossed the border asking political exile in Lithuania. It's purely like Berlin time in the 60s and 70s. We feel here like a last European and NATO train station. And this train station, Baltic states, should be defended with United States power. So we are trying here to bring American officers before pandemic to come to our parliament, to have tea and coffee with them, to have open discussion with the American military corps. John McCain was always coming here to award American army troops together with our Minister of Defense. And for example, yesterday, our parliament, evening time, probably mentioned by Žygis, my friend, voted in favor for map resolution of Lithuanian parliament unanimously adopted for the map for NATO map for Ukraine. So you have here enthusiastic pro-Western checkpoint Charlie defending Kross points here in front of terrible, wild dictatorships who keeping their people in thousands, in political prisoners in prison here in Minsk, 170 kilometers from Vilnius, building terrible, I'm sorry, Ojārs, terrible nuclear power plants next to Vilnius. It's they're trying to punish us with their nuclear projects who are built not in better conditions like Chernobyl, Ostrovets power plant. So we are, for American democracy, like an exam. They will be capable to defend the front line of democratic countries or not. For that reason, of course, I'm joining Eerik that we need more and more, but we need more and more, not rotational troops and rotational Navy ships coming to Klaipėda, Riga, and Tallinn ports, but we need permanent military bases with permanent massive American presence in Poland and Baltic states. It's absolutely clear that Russians should not cut us through Suwalki corridor, 100 kilometers between free way between Poland and Lithuania, and we need to have serious numbers of troops. That's until now is our key priority. I hope that this message will be transmitted from 3 presidents on the 14-15 during the summit of NATO. You just mentioned, Karl, and at our not only 3 Baltic states, but Poland is behind us. Trust me. We have absolutely synchronized our defense policy with Warsaw, and we have our brothers in Warsaw who are absolutely worried about situation of defense in Poland and in the Baltic states together. We will commemorate just our common constitution day, Polish-Lithuanian constitution, 1791, after 3 days together. 2 parliaments, Lithuanian parliament and Polish parliament, will synchronize their meetings, their plenary sittings, and we will do our common plenary meetings between the 2 parliaments in Warsaw and in Vilnius. So I think having Ukrainians on board, we have not in small numbers in Chicago, Washington, you know, in every city of the United States, and we are representing the world of defense of democracy and world of some numbers of people who are united now. I'm so glad, Karl, that you always invited Ukrainian community leaders to be together with us, and Polish friends always commemorated 3rd of May Constitution together, bringing flowers to Kościuszko monument in the front of White House.
Thank you, Emanuelis, and I'm glad to see Andrei Dobryansky here with the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, our good friend. We do a lot with the Ukrainians here in Washington and across the states. We need to do more. I know there's a Nord Stream 2 demonstration going on at the German embassy on Friday. I know that we're getting the word out about that. We've reached the bewitching hour. I was going to say we have to work with the Belarusians too, the Belarusian American communities. We have gone past our time. I did want to get in one more question, or maybe combine a couple of questions and then give Ojārs, you and Eerik and a final chance also to say something. But I see Yuri Cole has had his hand up for a while. Yuri, could you ask, you want to ask a question? Yuri, the floor is yours. Let's see. Going once.
Yes.
There you are. Great. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, Carl. Thanks for the time. My question is, how does cultural exchange back and forth between America and the Baltics enhance overall security? There being a history of cultural exchange being an entry point for understanding between cultures.
Okay, that was our last question today then, and Ojārs, you, and then Eerik and Emanuelis, if you wish.
Great basketball players to the United States and opera singers, then the Americans will love us.
Okay, that was a quick one.
Carl, if I can, I just want to
Sure.
make one plug because I know you're running out of time. Please Google the Crimean platform. This is a program that the Ukrainian government developed at the end of last year, and it's a comprehensive plan to defend the non-recognition policy of Crimea. We're all involved in it, and the U.S. Congress is behind it. I don't have time to explain it all, but look it up. And there's going to be a culmination on August 23rd in Kiev this year, where they're hoping world leaders, parliamentarians, and other experts will all arrive to once more remind the world about the illegal occupation of Crimea.
Thank you, Ojārs. We'll try to share the link. I'm looking for it right now. Eerik, from Estonia.
Yes, I think we have covered an extremely wide span of topics. So, as Emanuelis said, and I might not state it clearly enough before, that of course troops permanently based, U.S. or NATO, Western European troops in the Baltic states is our goal. How realistic in short term remains to be seen, and probably unfortunately we will need to see more Ukrainian blood before that will happen. But the way the world is moving right now, I think we will get there eventually. But that is something to keep in mind, that rotations are not, they're good, they're great, but they might not be enough.
Thank you. I know I didn't want to compete with the speech of the Latvian Prime Minister at Stanford today. He just started at 12, so I'm going to wind this down and thank our three speakers again from the Baltic capitals for joining us today, Ojārs, Eerik, and Emanuelis. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our audience. And I wanted to
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you. I wanted to remind you once again that we are planning a series of online events over the next month or so on hot topics and other important issues. So please stay tuned. It's great to see everybody here today, and thank you. And enjoy JBANC's birthday. Have your chocolate cake and your glass of wine too. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Carl, thank you for JBANC contribution to our ties, historical ties between the United States and the Baltic states.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you all soon again in person. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you so much.
Thank you for a great session. Very illuminating.